And my friends, know what you are voting on. Studies are out there that when you throw 15 million people off health care, some 50,000 of our fellow Americans will die unnecessarily every single year. Anyone think that's funny?
I talk a lot about the fact that we exist in a new political order. The old ways are dead, and it's unlikely they are to return. And this story, the 8 Democrats caving to Republicans, giving in to Republicans on the government shutdown in order to get the government back open, but also throwing millions of Americans under the bus while they do it, is exemplary of that. It is very, very instructive of the point that I make about the old political order being dead. And it's these individuals who I'm getting ready to name and we're going to talk about who still think that that political order exists. They still think that you can rely upon Republicans to negotiate, that you can follow them and abide by their rules and their word. None of that's true. Democrats really screwed us last night. Not Democrats globally, universally, generally. 8 of them. Well, 7 Democrats and 1 independent in Angus King from Maine. Pretty remarkable. Get a load of this tweet from Jonathan Karl. An end to the shutdown is in sight. A senior Democratic senator tells me there will be more than enough Democrats to vote in favor of reopening the government tonight. They'll get a promise of a vote. They'll get a promise of a vote. They're going to get a fucking promise, everybody. How happy. Wonderful. Tell that to the millions of Americans who are going to lose their health care. Tell that, talk about this promise to the millions of Americans who are going to have their healthcare premiums double or triple or quadruple. Some of them won't be able to afford it. They will lose their health insurance and they will die. But these 7 Democrats and 1 independent, they got a promise, everybody. There was a promise made by Republicans who we all know never lie. What do they think? What do these 7 Democrats and Angus King think? The rest of us see the writing on the wall. We know what the stakes are here. We will be impacted by the stakes. None of these 7, 8, we'll just call them 8, none of these 8 senators will feel that impact, will have it harm them in any way. And they're doing a victory lap. One of them on Fox News this morning. We'll get to that next. They'll get a promise of a vote on health care, but nothing more, says journalist Jonathan Karl. Most of the Democratic leadership will likely vote against it. He follows it up with this. The bill will extend funding until January 31st for most of the government and include 3-year-long appropriations bills, legislative branch, military construction and veterans affairs, and agriculture, including SNAP. That's fantastic. But what about everybody else? You're giving Donald Trump what he wants. You're leaning in to his agenda, providing him ammunition to harm more Americans. In governance, in leadership, decisions are tough, oftentimes seemingly impossible. I get that. But the road was clear here. The wins were sparse, but we were going to get them. And instead, you have sold America out and leaned in to give wind to the sails of Donald Trump's agenda. Good job. Fantastic. Let me read a little bit about what exactly is going on here from the Washington Post. And then I've got a clip of Bernie Sanders and several of Maggie Hassan that really does just give weight to my opinion about these people having no clue about the era in which they live, that they have no understanding that they exist in a new political order, to beat the drum here, and that the old ways are dead. They have no idea what's going on around them. This is from the Washington Post. Late night Senate deal opens path to ending shutdown, but splits Democrats. The deal doesn't extend expiring ACA subsidies. If a bill passes the Senate, it needs the House to approve and Donald Trump to be on board. So it's not just a hurdle of the Senate. Of course, you've got Mike Johnson you've got to get through, who has said on the record I'm not going to make any promises. So John Thune's promises are worthless. They're as worthless as Donald Trump's word. His word is Donald Trump's word. He is but a lackey in Donald Trump's machine. He is a cog in Donald Trump's cult. That's all it is. Democratic Senators Catherine Cortez Masto from Nevada, Tim Kaine from Virginia, Dick Durbin from Illinois, John Fetterman, no surprise. You're in great company, folks, when John Fetterman is in your cohort. Great job. Maggie Hassan of New Hampshire, Jacky Rosen of Nevada, and Jeanne Shaheen of New Hampshire voted to support the deal, as did Angus King, an independent who caucuses with Democrats. The bipartisan compromise combines 3 full-year funding measures into one package with a stopgap funding bill that would reopen the government through January 30th. Through January 30th. Wow, you really nailed it down. You got it. You got it done. Thank you. 8 Democrats. Fantastic. But the deal would not extend Affordable Care Act subsidies set to expire at the end of the year, which Democrats have warned will cause health insurance premiums to skyrocket for millions of Americans. Instead, Senate Majority Leader John Thune, Republican of South Dakota, committed to holding a separate vote on legislation to extend the subsidies by the second week of December after the government reopens. They did all of this. They blew up the whole thing for a promise from Republicans, not a promise from milquetoast, middle-of-the-road Chuck Schumer, who's very likely behind this, by the way, even though he voted no. He secured enough votes, in my estimation. He secured enough votes to get this passed, and then he himself says, I'm not going to vote for it. Common tactic that's been used in the past. This is what Bernie Sanders had to say about this, and he spoke plainly and clearly, as he always does on matters such as this. And he pulled no punches about what is exactly at stake, who will be harmed, and how many, including the death of likely 50,000 Americans per year.
What this Senate is about to do is make a horrific situation even worse. So let's be clear what this vote is about. If this vote succeeds, over 20 million Americans are going to see at least a doubling in their premiums in the Affordable Care Act. In my state of Vermont and throughout this country, for certain groups of people, it will be a tripling and a quadrupling of their premiums. There are people who will now be paying 50% of their limited incomes for health care. Does anybody in the world think that makes sense? And if this resolution is passed tonight, we are on a pathway to throw 15 million Americans off of Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act. 15 million. Our job is to create universal health care, guarantee health care to every man, woman, and child, not throw 15 million people off the health care they have, low-income and working-class people. And my friends, know what you are voting on. Studies are out there that when you throw 15 million people off health care, some 50,000 of our fellow Americans will die unnecessarily every single year. Anyone think that's funny? Something to laugh at? Something to just go past? I don't. 50,000 Americans die unnecessarily.
Now, look. Is not what I wanted to be doing today, talking about today. I would hope that we could have withstood more, gone on longer, pushing back against Donald Trump. But some Democrats don't have the Constitution for that. Some of those being Maggie Hassan, who in these 2 clips said some of the most ridiculous, completely unaware of her surroundings things that I've heard from an elected official in a long time. We're going to start with her talking about, we've now forced the Republicans to come to the table. They're going to have to finally admit whether or not they want to support the health care of millions of Americans. Like, what party, what institution do you work in, Maggie? You work around and with Republicans on a daily basis. You see what they say. You hear what they say. You watch them say it with your own eyes, and you still contend that we can shame them, that we can pressure can be brought to bear against them. They don't care. They just gave $6 trillion worth of tax cuts to wealthy Americans. $1.6 trillion in tax cuts to the top 5% of the country. You think they give a single shit about regular Americans, hardworking Americans, and their bottom line, about their healthcare costs, about their grocery prices, about their energy bills? They don't give a single fuck about that. And you know they don't. Watch this.
So my Democratic colleagues and I have been ready to work on this issue, on extending these tax cuts for months. With the government reopening shortly, Senate Republicans now finally have to come to the table. Or, make no mistake, Americans will remember who stood in the way. So I urge Speaker Johnson to finally return the House of Representatives into session and quickly reopen the government.
That's your big win? That Republicans now finally have to come to the table? Or make no mistake, the American people will remember? We were remembering before you sold us out. We knew what the stakes were. We knew what was on the table here, Maggie. You think we didn't know that before? She went on. It got worse.
My vote today was to do two things, both equally morally important and imperative. One is to make sure that the government is functioning so that our kids eat, so that our elderly citizens eat, so that our air traffic controllers can get some sleep and earn money, get paid while they are working, so that our veterans are protected, and continue the fight to a realistic platform to get the premium tax cuts done. And if that is not successful, then shame on the Republican Party and shame on Donald Trump. But the American people will see who stands with them on health care and who does not. And that will be the platform of the next stage of the fight. I hope we can find bipartisan agreement on an extension of those premium tax credits. In New Hampshire, couples who are 60 years old or so, earning $85,000 a year, are seeing like a $15,000 increase in their insurance premiums. This has to get fixed. And we have about a month to do it before the harm gets to be irreparable. And again, if the Republicans can't come to the table and do something reasonable on this and make sure that people can afford their health care and that the whole private commercial market also doesn't see skyrocketing increases, then shame on them.
Does this seasoned political leader, this person who's been in the United States Senate for many, many, many years, in Maggie Hassan, does she think that shame is some kind of a cudgel that will work against Republicans? That you can weaponize shame against them any more than they have against themselves? Republicans have no shame. Republicans have no dignity. Republicans have no integrity. If that is not successful, then shame on the Republican Party and shame on Donald Trump. Shame? When was that ever a tool? Speaking of tools, Catherine Cortez Masto said some of the most ridiculous things at this presser that I've ever heard come out of the mouth of a senator, especially a Democrat, talking about Republicans, what expectations she has for Republicans. These people live in a fantasy world. Watch this.
We have an opportunity also to put Republicans on the record on the ACA. Are they committed to doing this? Are they committed? Leader Thune said he would come to the table on a health care once the government was open, and now he must follow through. If Republicans want to join us in lowering costs for working families, they have the perfect opportunity to show the American public. I expect Republicans to be at the table in the next few weeks. I expect the White House to be at the table. And if they do choose not to come to the table, they can own the disastrous premium increases that will continue to rise. They will own the fact that Americans across this country are going to lose access to health care. We were elected in the Senate to work on real solutions that help working families.
There's the promise. John Thune's promise. Leader Thune said he would come to the table. Oh, he said it. Oh, he said he would come to the table. You hear that, audience? Feed your kids with that promise. Go to the grocery store and tell the checker that, oh, I've got an IOU in the form of a promise from John Thune. Provide health care for yourself and your family with the promise of John Thune. Lots of currency we're dealing with here. He must follow through. He must follow through now that he's given his word. That's the way it works in this political order that's existed for more than a century in the United States, thinks Catherine Cortez Masto. If Republicans want to join us in lowering costs for working families, what gives you the idea that Republicans want to lower costs for working families? In what universe? In what reality? In what dimension do you exist that the rest of us do not? Republicans don't give a single fuck about Americans' healthcare costs. They don't care about the price of groceries. They don't care about hungry children. They don't care. What they care about is providing a $1.6 trillion tax cut to the top 5% of wage earners in this country. That's what they care about. They care about destroying the social safety net in this nation in order to give corporate welfare to billionaires. Shame on these Democrats. This is probably not even going to get watched by many because of the fact that people don't like criticism of Democrats. But what are we doing here? We're in a fight for our life, for the continuation, the very existence of our democracy, of our country. And Democrat after Democrat after Democrat continues to lean in, providing aid and comfort to Donald Trump, the enemy of our country. Voting for his nominees, voting to open up the government and allow them to strip away health care from millions of people, leading, as Bernie said, to the death of likely 50,000 plus Americans per year. It's shameful. It's weakness. It is cowardice. And look, do I think that they think that it's going to be the right thing? Yeah, I think they do think that. All the more reason to get them the fuck out of here. All the more reason they shouldn't have a job in the United States Senate. If they are so daft, if they are so ignorant, if they are so naive to believe that John Thune's word is worth anything, they need to go. And many of them are on the way out anyway, which is an extra thumb in your eye. There's not going to be any political consequence for them. They're not running for re-election. They're going to retire. Go back to being private citizen billionaires, not U.S. citizen millionaires. Excuse me, they're not billionaires. Millionaires, certainly. Millionaires, certainly. Who don't have to worry about where their next meal is going to come from. Who don't have to worry about their healthcare premiums. They're on a Cadillac plan being former United States senators. Anyway, I'm done. Gone too long. Love and appreciate you. I want to hear from you on this. Are you one of those that doesn't like me to criticize Democrats? I apologize for that. I apologize that you don't want me to criticize Democrats. I don't apologize about criticizing Democrats. I'm a Democrat. The only way to better our party, to strengthen our party, to have this party exist is to criticize, is to make it better, is to push us toward progress. And I hope you agree. You can call and leave me a voicemail, 714-576-4054. And of course, as always, you can email me, daily@dollemore.com. I'd love to hear from you. I'm going to go. Gone too long anyway. See you next time. Be genuine. Take care of one another.